We'll have this 20-minute fireside chat with Mr. Jaishankar, except there's no fire, and I wish there was. I know this has become popular to call it fireside chat, even in places like Mumbai, where you certainly never need a fireplace, but in Delhi you do. This is a great opportunity for us to interact with Mr. Jaishankar. Mr. Jaishankar, of course, spoke in the last session, and you would know that he's been spearheading IFCL's initiatives for the last few years. He's a big innovator himself. I think he did the first mortgage-backed securities when he was at National Housing Bank many, many years ago, and has done a lot of work with green bonds and credit enhancing measures, et cetera, while at IFCL. And I know he was not introduced in the last session, so I thought I will mention all of these things. I have a few questions for you, Mr. Jaishankar, and maybe if time permits, we'll take one or two from the audience later on as well. So my first question to you is, what do you see are the big challenges today in infrastructure financing?
If I were to, just pinpoint a few as compared to what we were about a couple of decades ago, or maybe 1.5 decades ago, greenfields still pose to be a big challenge. We still do not have the desired level of perfection in our concessions and procurement systems. So to that extent, we would look at it a little more with concerned perspectives. In the last 2-3 years, we have seen a lot of activeness or activity among the bond market investors for completed assets, and in the brownfield space we have made a lot of strides. So I think it's only the greenfields which actually looks more a bigger challenge today. But given the level of reforms and given the kind of push the government has been giving in almost all the areas, I'm sure these are all learnings, and these are with the learnings we will be able to put the system in place in the times to come.
Okay. What has been the good news the last couple of years in this sector? What have been the positive developments from a financing point of view?
It's actually, looking at it from 2015 when the slew of reforms have started, we have seen a lot of tweaking of the concession agreements. We have seen renegotiations being introduced. We have seen bidding methodologies being revisited. We have also seen, hybrid annuity model, and a lot of other financial sector regulatory modifications also coming in. And this year, this last 5 years have also, witnessed something more important. The NBFC IFCs taking a larger share of the infrastructure cake as compared to the banks which dominated them earlier. I think that is also one very, very important shift which has taken place. So the specialization is definitely in the coming, and that's what the message is all about. And the new age instruments, the InvITs, the IDFs, and particularly in the NBFC segment, and monetization programs of the various completed assets, operational assets. So these all have given a lot of fillip to the idea about the gap that persisted earlier. I think meeting the gap, which is actually a huge gap which is there in the infrastructure financing, particularly, almost 10% of the NIP, almost 10 lakh crores, that's what is the estimate. So I'm sure with the concerted effort of all these new age instruments and the operationalization, the monetization of the operational assets, we would be able to kind of bridge the gap. One more very important thing is, in the loan book of the banks and NBFCs, which is about 26 lakh crores today, we have almost 30 to 35% of completed assets. which are just waiting to get into the bond market. That is also a kind of a churning that can take place and help the banks finance more infrastructure assets with great capital relief.
Mr. Jaishankar, I know that you've been involved with many changes in regulatory frameworks over the last few years to make it easier for infrastructure financing. What are the things that you're still looking for that have not yet been done?
One very important thing is, which we were, looking at is the modifications in the financial regulations, that is the restructuring of standard assets. The modifications in the RBI guidelines have come about in the last year, September. This has given a good approach to various banks and financial institutions which are already having assets to actually churn the assets. But yes, there are other challenges which are attendant to the process, which has to be addressed, like putting in place a methodology for stress testing such assets. So those are all there. But more importantly, I think the direction is very much there now for relay financing to really take shape in India for long-term infrastructure financing. That's one. There are other small aspects. There are very, very important areas that needs to be addressed, like technical NPAs, the 4-year system for the first 2 years and then extension by 1 year and then another year. So I think these are some things, even if a asset is performing well, if for some if the asset is actually servicing well, even if for some reason the COD is delayed beyond this 4 years for uncontrollable reasons, still it gets regarded as technical NPAs. I think these are some things which has to be revisited, and we have to look at it in the context of the asset performance and asset potential, rather than just limited to certain time-bound prescriptions. So these are some things which we need to look at.
If I can come to IFCL now, what do you see? How do you see the role of IFCL evolving, or changing, or growing over the next few years?
IIFCL has been a last mile lender to begin with. We have come a long way in the last 17 years. We have seen a number of new introductions, new financial product introductions, and those have now become a part of our mainstream portfolios. Going forward, we have, we are now into bonds. We are actually looking at investments in bonds in a very big way. We are looking at financing InvITs. We are also looking at taking a larger part of, the programs of the government when they are monetizing some of their operational assets. So all those, things to supplement the governmental interventions in infrastructure, we are at it. At the same time, policy advocacy is one area where we are more focusing. We have a research wing which we have now set up in IIFCL. The subsidiaries in the consultancy and advisory areas are also performing very well. We are having our footprints across India, all across the state governments, all the infrastructure ministries, and now we are into space. So now the IIFC UK, which was not doing too well 3 to 4 years ago, now they are back in profitability. Their network is now their net worth is now positive, and their networking is also quite good amongst the global investors. So they are doing quite well as far as the external commercial borrowing segment is concerned. And going forward, we have put in place a medium-term strategy, and we hope to grow, but with a difference, not in the usual traditional sense of growing our loan assets. Loan book, probably we'll put a cap on our growth, but we would like to make a difference as far as our contributions are concerned in terms of sanctions and disbursements. and more importantly in the returns on assets and returns on equity. So, so that we are not able to compromise between the returns and the loan book. So, we would like to do a lot of churning, and we would like to grow more largely with the help of internal accruals than equity infusions. Probably, yes, equity infusions could be there in future from different sources, but the idea is that largely we will be focusing our growth from internal accruals.
Besides roads and power and renewables, what are the other sectors that you're looking to do more in?
Earlier, we were more focused on power and roads, 45% each. Today, that has come down to almost 22% each. We are into airports, ports, urban infra. In energy segment, we are almost in all the subsectors in the energy segment, more into the green and renewable part of it. We are also looking at data centers. We are into city gas. Then transmission assets are also one very important. Now that we have started investing in bonds, we are more into areas, different areas. That gives us a more capacity to leverage, and nuclear power space and all the other areas where we can engage with the special purpose vehicles of the government. We are trying to foray into those areas.
I noticed that there are a lot of people from banks here, and these are your co-lenders or clients. How has your relationship with the banks changed?
Banks have always been a partner in the process, and I think we were more last mile lenders to the banks. Banks have always dominated. Only in the last few years we have been able to kind of assert our position to a certain extent. But still in the green fields, we are still having a cap on our exposures. So obviously there has to be complementarity, and it is only, like I said, with complementarity that we can really achieve the final goal of a long-term infrastructure finance, and see how best we together with the banks, IIFCL and other NBFC IFCs, we can put forward a mechanism for the long-term finance which can actually help the infrastructure assets to become much more commercially viable, bankable, and with a better DSCR and better utility for the end users. I think it's a kind of a teamwork that has to be more fostered.
And what is it that you need from them that you may not be getting as much as you would like?
Well, I think it's a very small world, and the cake is too large. So I think we need to enhance our capacities. The banks have good capacities, and we have to leverage on those capacities. And probably, yes, as far as greenfield financing is concerned, the capacities for no other institution except a few other NBFCs other than IFCL has the capacities. The banks always have had that. So post the construction phase, it is a cluster of institutions and investors which have to take the asset financing forward. So I think that is the kind of new architecture which seems to be shaping up, with the bond market also getting more interested, with global financiers coming into InvIT segment, and with more equity coming into the InvIT segment. I think gradually we are seeing the development of a system which promotes infrastructure assets moving from the construction phase, from the banking books to either the InvIT books or any other investors' books, and there it can be either financed by the bonds or a cluster of other investors and lenders put together according to their risk, return, and liability profiles.
And what are your key priorities for IFCL for the next 12 months?
We will continue to put our efforts towards doing what we are doing. I would not make any large claims. We have been very modest about many things. We are just trying to do something good and correct. And we will try to do the same things, and we will try to be more consistent about whatever we are doing. Yes, innovation is something which is, IIFCL's forte, and we would like to position IIFCL. We would like to see IIFCL as the leading innovative infrastructure lender, and towards that we will be working with a focus towards new products and new structures.
Yeah. And last question, what are your budget wishes or expectations, or what is it that you have communicated?
Yeah, I would leave that to the panels. But yes, as personally, I would like to see infrastructure law in the country. Perhaps it's very high time that we have such a very systematic law enacted, which can actually protect all the stakeholders in the system, right from the concessionaires, private investors, to the public authorities in terms of ensuring quality, ensuring pricing, appropriate pricing for the end users, and then lenders, then future investors. All the, the entire stakeholders in the system has to be protected in a long term. We are looking at generations. We are looking at many governments to come and go. But yet, the original provisions and covenants of the infrastructure concessions and procurement contracts must be protected, must be enforceable, and it must, live the test of time.
One quick, one last question, I promise. There are also a number of private investors here, and what would be your suggestion to them in terms of areas they should look at that perhaps they're not looking as closely right now?
Yeah, we are, in the last 2 years, there has been a lot of interest, keenness to develop in completed assets. I would say that there are a number of greenfield assets also which are now shaping up well because of the ground level reforms which are being put in place in various major public authorities like the NHAI and a few other states like the UP. So I think selectively one should start doing that. But probably the brownfield assets are more in demand, and it's only the structures, the way in which we will structure the financing that will determine the way in which we develop this, we actually widen and deepen the investor interest in this. And I think we're working towards that. And market seems to be very, very conducive, and we look at more confidence developing as more and more reforms takes place in the segment.
Thank you, and congratulations again, and best wishes for next year. And of course, thank you for giving us this opportunity as well.
Thank you, Bradaji.
Thank you.